Northampton's General Hospital. The best music, Radio Nene Valley.
It's Radio Nene Valley on a Saturday morning, Saturday the 18th of October, and it's 6 minutes past 9. And our guest, as we said this morning, is our poet in residence, although doesn't actually live here. It's James McInerney. Good morning, James. I called you a poet. Do you like being labelled as a poet?
I mean, I don't really mind because obviously I like writing, and poetry is a huge part of my life. Obviously, I'm not like Shakespeare or anything like that, or any kind of poets.
That's no bad thing, is it?
Yeah, no. But I just like I think you write poetry, people label you a poet, and it just comes with the territory. But I just love writing, and I love sharing my words and people liking them, and it's just kind of you don't really see yourself as a poet as just a writer that likes to write poetry. It's just weird. It's weird.
So when did you first become interested in poetry or writing in general, I suppose?
Well, no interest at school, wasn't really taught poetry at all, so it never really stemmed from that. Just started writing one day, listening to film scores from films, started writing to them and thought I'd write down, feelings, thoughts, and it kind of progressed from there. And I had one poem, and then I thought, I'll have another go, and I had another poem, and I started building up a collection of poems and kind of went from there, really.
But why poetry? Why not sort of? Obviously, you've got the interest in it, and you can express yourself. But why not write stories?
Because my attention span is really bad. I couldn't write an entire book. I'd get bored within about 3 chapters in. I did try writing short stories, and I can do that, but it's just the length of a book. A poem is you finish a poem, you start a poem in one, and that's it. You move on to the next one, and each one is a story on its own. Whereas a book is 200 pages of continuous writing. I know I wouldn't have the attention span or the time to put all my effort into doing that.
But surely anyone that writes a book, you don't sit there and write it all in one go, do you?
No. But I think I would just kind of like lose track of it, or I just think life is so busy in general anyway. For me, I mean, I just wouldn't have time. When I write my poetry, it's on the way to work, or when it's a quiet time, I'll sit down with music on and write, and it's kind of fitting it in. And poetry is good for fitting it in, as opposed to write a massive story. I just think I can start a poem, end a poem, and it'll be done, and I haven't got to worry about anything else.
So you think if you were doing a story, you'd get bored of the subject?
Oh, not bored, but I just think it's a lot writing a story, and I think it's easy as a poet, and poetry is about emotions, and listening to the music, I can use that for the poetry, whereas a book is a different kind of style of writing for me.
Oh, so what is a poem? What's the definition of a poem?
Well, there isn't no real definition of poem, because I've heard so many different poems over the years, and you would say, well, that's not a poem, but it's classed as a poem. So I don't think there really is a definition of a poem. Obviously, it's different. It's not a short story. That's different in length. But it's just like a collection of feelings, emotions that somebody's been through or hasn't been through. They've made it up in their mind. And it's just like that, really. It's kind of like a collection of feelings, emotions down on paper for everyone else to see. So in that case, and for instance, when does a blog become poetry? Well, that's very great. Now it's getting confusing. You're adding more things in.
But you're saying that the poem is just basically a brain dump of feelings.
Yeah.
And that. So a blog is the same then.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I've kind of struggled over the years to define what a poem is, because, like I say, I've seen so many different rights that people have classed as poetry, and heard so many different people read poetry, that you wouldn't necessarily think that's poetry, but it is classed as poetry. And I think it's such a wide area, poetry, that it covers everything, which is why I think it is so popular.
Because poetry doesn't actually need to rhyme, does it?
No.
Which I think is what confuses a lot of people, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think people come into the idea that they've got to make it rhyme. They've got to it's got to sound like poetry. It's got to sound like some Shakespearean thing, and it doesn't have to. It's just a collection of your feelings written down on paper, and basically also lyrics to a song or a poem, really, if you look at it that way. So it could be classed as anything. I've just fell into an area where everything is poetry, so...
So songwriting then?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, song lyrics work as poems anyway, and I've had quite a few of my poems turned into songs anyway, so I know they work backwards and forwards, so it's definitely song lyrics really are a poem anyway in their own right.
Yeah, we've got one of yours. We'll play it a little bit later from Poppy Khan.
Yep.
Lady by the Lake. What was the process then with that? Then you wrote a poem.
Yeah, I wrote a poem quite a few years ago now, and I basically work with a lot of YouTubers who take my poems and turn them into songs in their own style. And it kind of like she agreed to take one of my poems and turn it into a song. And it kind of started from there. I was talking on YouTube with her, and she laid down a few tracks and showed me some things she'd done, and then it turned out this amazing song. And she really is quite popular on YouTube anyway, so it was an honour kind of really to work with her.
Should we have a listen to it?
Yep.
My lady by the lake still searches for her sea and dreams of summers past. Amongst the innocence of trees, their leaves have now fallen, quietly stolen by the breeze. Yet there lives in her a sadness as all colors start to bleed, held hostage by the shadows. I watch her slowly grieve, and though I have no place to call my home, I still belong to where the seasons roam, be it summer, winter, spring, or fall. How I dance amongst a sea of souls, unafraid of change that comes my way. Helplessly I wait, learning how to breathe, for I know she'll find the courage when it comes the time to leave. And I'll be waiting just beyond the sunrise with all the love she will ever need. And though I have no place to call my home, I still belong to where the seasons roam, be it summer, winter, spring, or fall. How I dance amongst a sea of souls, unafraid of change that comes my way. I am the lady by the lake, and I still search for a sea, and I dream of summers past. My golden skin now, paper thin, it moves in rhythm with the wind, and I know I'll find the courage when it comes a time to leave. And I'll be waiting just beyond the sunrise with all the love that I will ever need.
There you go. So you can write songs as well.
Yeah, well, I can only say thank you to Poppy for doing that, because she made it amazing anyway. So, which is proof that a poem can be so much more than just writing on a page.
Yes, certainly can. When we met, you touched on it briefly earlier on, but when I was at school, poetry didn't really play a very large part. I don't actually remember it playing any part, to be honest. Are things starting to change?
Well, when I was at school, it didn't either. We just probably looked at a few poets, history, looked at them. But now it is, yeah. I mean, kids, my children are all studying poetry at secondary school. And it's a big, huge part of the curriculum now. 100%. I mean, they're looking at poems, they're dissecting them, working out what they're about, and writing poetry. So it's become very, very popular in schools, probably last year or so.
Can you actually teach somebody to write poetry?
That's the thing. It's you can give help. You can give help and guidelines of techniques, but you can't read what's in a person's mind. So you couldn't, when you write about emotions. You couldn't put emotions into them in that respect. You can see what they're like when they start writing and give them guidelines and help, and try and show them different techniques of doing different things and see if it helps. But you can't necessarily teach poetry. It's got to come from you to start with. And then kind of progressive. Same as me, no one taught me. I learned it as I went along. So I think that's a fine example of how you basically learn as you go along with poetry and any kind of thing, really.
Do you have a favourite poet? I think we've mentioned this before.
I think Milton was a really good one of mine. But I didn't really grow up reading poetry or anything like that. I was kind of like And it was a good thing because everything I wrote was my own and wasn't copied from somebody else. So like I said, I didn't have anything at school. I didn't kind of read poetry, and it just kind of like progressed from nowhere, really.
Right, I mean, Milton's obviously one of the traditional ones where I think some of their stuff does rhyme. And that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of sort of the more modern, I suppose a lot of them are called sort of more performance poets. I suppose I say more modern, it's actually called, if your McGoffs and things like that. Do you have any favourites of the more modern?
I don't know, because, well, I haven't really, with me, I'm so busy writing, I think, I don't really, people do send me poems and I look at different other people's poems, but I don't really have time to kind of look at different poets and their styles. I'm just kind of like so busy writing myself. It just kind of like everything else is a blur around me. So I don't really focus too much on poetry other than kind of like how I write mine and how it comes out on the page.
Do you think it's better to avoid actually listening to other people's?
I think it is sometimes because like with musicians, you'll find that you'll hear a song, a musician, a new artist, oh, that sounds familiar, that song. And they've, not on purpose, but they've obviously heard it somewhere and it's in their mind, and that rhythm, that chord is kind of like stuck with them and it suddenly appeared in their song. So sometimes it can be your worst enemy by reading other writing. You probably don't mean to copy someone else's work, but it's in your mind and you do it unconsciously. So I kind of like steer clear of everything and just write my own and be original.
Do you think you actually need to read a poem more than once or a few times to fully appreciate it?
Definitely, because every poem, every person that reads it will have a different take on it for a start off. And when you read a poem again, you'll see something different that you didn't see the first time. I've got so many poems that people have read over and kind of missed out what it's about. And then I've kind of gone back to me and said, you know, what it's about. I've told them, they've reread it and said, oh yeah, I see it now. So every poem is kind of like, it's more in between the lines than there is actually on the page. And you have to really, instead of just glossing over it, actually really have a good read 2 or 3 times of it, I think.
So you think actually you find something different every time?
I think so. And I think people, like with poetry, whereas a book you read it through, you know the end, you know what happens. A book of poems can sit on your shelf, you can take it back down and read it again, and it can be fresh and new every single time, as opposed to a book which once you've read through it.
What's happened in that year since we last spoke?
Oh, a huge amount. My kind of books now have appeared on a lot more platforms. They're currently, where they're on Amazon, they're now on Kindle, Kobo, Barnes & Noble, Waterstones, W.H. Smith, and they're basically in schools, libraries, colleges, universities in UK and Ireland now. So they're kind of spreading out every single, place all over the place.
Have you worked out how many you've sold?
No. But people do lovingly send in pictures when if they buy the book. Some people do send in pictures holding the book, and I put them on the website. And so I don't really have a clue, but I know I get lovely messages in my inbox and pictures, and so I think they're doing quite well. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Good. What tips would you give to somebody, though, that thinks that they'd like to write poetry?
I think it's quite hard to give a tip, other than to start kind of like, what I do is I carry pen and paper with me everywhere, and kind of like write everything down. If you're feeling something, write it down on a bit of paper. That way you can kind of put it all together later on, or kind of like you get kind of like not worry too much about writing, because I kind of spent a lot of my time worrying about what is wrong, what is right when you're writing a poem, and I think that kind of puts the creative process downhill a bit. So I kind of like just write what I feel, and to hell with it.
So what you write? Are you writing down a line of a poem, or are you just writing lovely sunset today? It's rained all day. You're just writing sort of pointers.
I use music, so when I'm walking with my headphones on, the kind of music is the inspiration. So I'll listen to an instrumental film score, and that'll be my inspiration to write. But it will also be things from your mind, emotions, feelings, and I will write down lines. Probably change them later on, because I'm an edit freak. But I kind of like write down lines and kind of make a poem that way, build one up that way.
Can you write a poem on a given subject then, or does it have to be something that sort of comes into your mind when you're listening to a bit of music?
Yeah. I can't write them to order, because I find that I have done it for magazines and newspapers, and it was really hard work. Somebody would say, write a poem about this or that, and I kind of think, well, how, because it's kind of like I write mine to music, so it would be like, how do you write a poem about a specific subject when it's kind of like, I don't know, it's hard.
So what would you do in that situation? And would you look through what you've written recently and think, well, that I could tweak that a little bit? And
Well, it's kind of like I'd probably find a piece of music that I think would work with what they want, and then kind of like put a few emotions in it. But it's hard because it's personal poems are, so it's hard to write them to order when it's like doing Christmas cards, and you get the greetings inside. It's hard to write something to order as opposed when they're personal to you.
you say that you, if a magazine says to you, I want you to write a poem about Wimbledon, you say you'll find a bit of music that's going to inspire. How would you find a piece of music that's going to inspire that? I mean, you listen to classical music and you listen to film
Scores.
If you listen to a film score, would you write a poem that reflected that film, or just how the music?
I mean, some of the music I haven't even seen the film, so it's just I've heard it in the background while I was doing other work, and I thought, well, I like that.
So your poem would have no bearing on the actual film?
Oh no, it's just really the emotions from the music itself. So it would be nothing to do with the film. It would be just whether the instrumental film score or the orchestral film score that I'm hearing at the time, and then you'd think about what it would relate to in emotions, and then you think of an image in your mind, and then the picture comes from that.
Well, I mean, we heard Poppy's version of Your Lady by the Lake. What sort of music would that have been? A classical one that would have inspired that?
Yeah, classical, kind of like a slow moving piece, very emotional, because that is a very emotional piece anyway. So, I mean, I've got a whole library of music that I use, like Pride and Prejudice with Keira Knightley. That's a good one. The whole soundtrack to that is brilliant. I brought that off iTunes, and every single song on there is good for writing poetry. So it's finding that album that is really, really good, that you could probably write. I could listen to that and think I could write loads of poems about that subject. And that's the kind of way it works for me. It's all about kind of a love lost a lot of my things.
It's a strange way.
It's a weird process. I mean,
Yeah.
I've never really... I think that's probably why doing these poetry workshops, it's going to be different, because we're going to incorporate that right into music. It's kind of an experiment to see somebody else doing it, how they do it, because that's the way I've only ever done it. I only ever write to music, so I don't know any other way, and it's just a weird thing I've kind of accepted as normal. So it's strange.
Do you ever talk to any other? I know you do a lot of online stuff. Do you ever talk to other poets?
Yeah, I do. Online mainly because I'm so busy anyway. I get inbox messages and people ask for advice, and they'll share me send me their poems to see what I think, and they're really good.
And do you talk to them and find out how their process is? I mean, is the process that you use with listening to music and is that, I'm not going to say is that normal, but is that sort of thing that other people do? Or
I mean, I've heard of people painting listening to music.
Right.
I don't know whether, but I've never heard of people writing poetry to music.
No.
Which is weird. But I've come to accept it as normal because I put my headphones on and I do it every day. I've never come across someone who does the same thing. So
if it works for you, then that's fine. How long does it actually take to write a poem, or is it impossible to sort of?
It varies. It'll take a month to write one, obviously because of time constraints, and I can write one straight out in one go, and be happy with it, or I can edit it and it could take a week or so. But I mean, each one varies, and a lot of pressure put upon myself, and sometimes I edit it so much it can take a lot longer. So where I go back, I could have quite actually stuck with the original poem, but it's just you yourself are your own worst critic, so I kind of edit stuff to death.
Looking at your website, James, it's fairly clear that you're also interested in photography as well.
Yeah.
How important is that to you?
Well, when I get spare time, I've got I've got an expensive camera which I bought, and I got all the gear because I was really interested in photography, black and white photography and everything. But kind of like poetry, I kind of run them side by side, but poetry's well overshadowed photography. I still take quite a lot of photos and store them on computer for later on. But I used to love photography. Because again, it's an art form. It's creative.
Why black and white?
I think they're more stark. So you look at a picture black and white, it looks better than colour. It's just my own personal opinion. But some of the old-fashioned black and white pictures are really stunning, and and how crisp and clear they are. I just love black and white pictures.
think especially if you go do a large format picture, I think nothing's better than a huge black and white.
And I kind of
picture.
love photography, and it's just kind of like fell by the wayside at the moment with all the poetry and everything. But I still take photographs. I've still got my camera, and I still go out on days and think I want to take a picture. So it's still there.
Negative or digital?
Digital. Digital, yeah.
Because I think that has completely taken over now, hasn't it? 'Cause
Yeah.
I think magazines and newspapers were the last people that actually stuck with negatives, and that they've thoroughly gone on to digital.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with digital. You can edit on your computer. You can do everything, and it's free. You take a picture. You don't have to go to a company to have it processed. You can do the whole thing on your computer, and it's free. So,
but the days of saying that the photograph never lies, they're completely gone, aren't they?
yeah, Photoshop.
The only thing is though with that you sort of get. I mean, I don't know what is it 30 megapixels you can get now?
Yeah.
30. Yeah, 30.
What, the cameras?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you print it on a 30 quid printer.
Yeah. It's been cameras are so technical now. It's really complicated to actually get the latest cameras. People use their iPads now and their camera phones and that kind of thing. And kind of digital cameras are also kind of disappearing as well for people favouring, their actual iPhones or their devices. And I noticed that a lot of shops just recently went across around in town has just closed down. Photography shops selling cameras and everything.
Right.
And I think that's probably because people have got their camera phones now. People tend to use the camera phones for everything. So
or buy them online, whatever.
Buy them online. So that's another probably era that's disappearing as well. It's just weird.
Now, we said earlier your books are available in printed form and also via download. Another thing that's actually taking over from the printed word. Which method's actually more profitable to you?
I think probably the digital downloads are more profitable. I mean, I love a book anyway. I got my book out in paperback because I love books. I could have gone straight to digital and just left everything digital, but I love a book in your hand. And I think that's what I wanted. As a child, I grew up with books. So as an author, I always thought I'd love to have a book on a shelf somewhere. And I think that will never disappear. But digital downloads, they're quick, they're easy. People can buy it there and then. They haven't got to wait for it to be delivered. There's no delivery costs to them. So they basically press a button and the whole book downloads to their device.
Do you think there's still a place for both, or are books really on the way out?
I don't think on the way out. I think Stephen King just recently, his latest book, he released it only in paperback because obviously it was not available anywhere else, and he was only going to release it in paperback. So I think when people authors like that are doing that, maybe there is a sign that ebooks are becoming more popular. But obviously the old style authors are still trying to keep people's interest in a physical book in your hand. And I think I still love to hold a book in my hand. I have got an electronic reader device, but I love a book personally.
Yeah, I mean, you read a book, you get to a thing, and then you place it face down and come back to it. Like you can't do that with your digital one.
No, and I just prefer a book. Turn the pages, the book, feel the book in your hand. It's just I've grew up with books, so that's kind of like maybe the next generation of children who grew up with ebooks. It'll be different for them, but I've kind of grew up on books.
I mean, what future for libraries if you're going to go with digital?
Downloads. Yeah. I mean, that's the worry for me. I mean, because I grew up with books. I grew up going to the library when we were children. We borrowed books from the library all the while. So I love libraries. I actually love going to libraries, being in them. And it'd be a shame if anything ever happened. But I think there's so many books out there in circulation. It would never be a case.
Do you think it's an age thing? Do you think? I mean, the younger ones are going to get more used to the digital download type of thing, especially with music. I mean, we regularly get new members join us, and they'll come in here and they'll go, "What's that?"
Yeah, turntables.
Turntables, yeah. People haven't got an idea on that, and you're going to also very soon get a generation that won't remember cassettes.
Yeah.
And probably won't even remember CDs.
Yeah, I mean, this generation now is digital generation. You've got digital music, digital books, digital movies streaming online. Everything's digital. And I think their children will be even worse. So everything from now will have disappeared, really. I think that's the way it will go.
But I think what a lot of people are missing out on, or missing the concept that a lot of these digital downloads, music and films and things, you don't actually ever own anything, do you?
No, you don't get the bookwork, the artwork you get with a CD. You don't get the book, the cover, or anything. You just literally get the text, and that's it.
Yeah, and I think in effect, a lot, especially with the iTunes, I think it is, you don't physically own anything.
Oh, do you not?
No, because I think it was Bruce Willis. I think put in his will that he was going to leave his iPod with his music on to his children, and that was no, not transferable.
Oh, unless you've got the U2 album, the new one.
Well, yeah, whether you wanted or not.
Yeah, I think it is strange to downloads because it kind of lives in a cloud, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So any music you buy lives in the cloud, and it just pulls it to your device. So you don't actually, like you say, really own it. And every now and then I go from my iPod, and I've found out I've deleted stuff, and you have to, you don't physically have a copy on your iPod. You've got to go and download it again. It's, whether you've got a CD or a tape, it's all there for you. But it's complicated, these downloads. I think it's just we live in a kind of time now where everything is ease of use. So you want to watch a film, you stream it from your front living room. You want a music, you buy it there and then. You don't go out to the shop and buy it. You buy it in your living room. Anything can be bought in your house now. So I think that's the kind of generation we unfortunately live in.
Which is why we've now got a town that's got virtually
no shops.
Nothing in it.
Yeah, and I think even before the digital.
But never mind. Free car parking.
Free
no
at
shops.
The weekends.
No shops when you get there, but it's free to park, which is excellent. Yeah. How do you actually go about getting a book published in this day and age?
I think kind of each person's individual. They go off and kind of look at publishers or do it yourself. It's kind of nowadays with the way the world is. It's everything. You can do it yourself. Everything is open for you to have full control of everything that you want.
Is it really that easy?
It is, yeah. It is. It's very easy. And I've had people speak to me about it, and I've kind of directed them to a lot of the self-publishing sites, and they have done it, and they've produced their own book, and they're happy with it. And I think it's all about you being in control of your own work. And if you are happy with something and you want the people to share it with people, is that you getting it out there yourself. And then when it's out there yourself, you can then go and do things with it yourself and actually achieve things that you've always wanted to achieve instead of waiting on someone else to say yes or no. And I think that's the way it is.
What's the process then, start to finish? You've got this hard disk with your poems on. You've done all these poems in Word, and they're all sitting there. It's
a laborious task of formatting, editing, getting the margins right, getting everything right, and it is a lot. I will admit, it's a lot of hard work.
So do you download a template?
No, you have to do it kind of like all online. Right. It's all done online, and you can download a template, but it'll have to be uploaded online and has to be then tweaked to fit in with their guidelines. And it's a lot of formatting. It's a lot of hard work, and it's pulling your hair out hard work. But when the finished product's done and you're happy with it and you get sent a copy of it, it's worth it in the end.
And you have total control over it.
You have full control. They take the percentage they cut for per book, which is fair enough because it's sold on the biggest bookstore in the world. But you have full control to do anything. You get ISBN numbers, you get the lot, and you can basically go off and do anything you want with it and be your own person with it, as opposed to being tied in with everything else and being and someone else being in control of your work. So it's what people are doing now. They're doing it themselves and having full power and control over their own words and everything else. And I think it's much, much better.
So you don't have the situation of Amazon, you upload it into Amazon saying, that's not going to sell.
No, you can do whatever you want. I think they review it. I think they look at it to make sure that the material's okay. But other than that, once the book's sent to you, you get a copy of the book sent, proof copies, and you get to look through them. And if it's okay, you press the go button and it's live on. And Amazon is the biggest book marketplace in the world, so you're in the best place to be selling your books to start with. And then you just go from there, and you can add to other sites and do digital downloads. And it's so much easier now in the digital world that people are doing everything themselves, and they're kind of bypassing everyone else and cutting out the middleman.
Well, 10 or 20 years ago, if you'd have wanted to do your own publish your own book, it'd be, I think it was termed vanity press, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And you'd end up with your spare room full of copies of this because you'd have to have X thousand of them printed.
Yeah.
It's not like that now.
No, I mean they're printed to order, so you don't have to even do anything. People order your book, they get it printed to order, they're happy with it, you're happy. Everyone's kind of a winner, really. It's kind of a no cost laid out to you, so you can put your words on there. People can say, because I had so many requests of where's your book, where can I buy it, and I never really thought of a book getting out. I just kind of wrote poems down and shared them for hoping that people would like them. And then I was on the BBC and someone said, where's your book? And I just thought I hadn't really thought about it, and then kind of looked into it, and from there on it kind of went that I would do it this way, and it's been the best thing I've ever done I could ever imagine. You know, the publishers have so many manuscripts on their desks piled up. Yours is just thrown on top, you know, and you could be sitting there for the rest of your life waiting. But at that time, you could be going off and doing all the things you ever wanted to do, which is what I've been doing.
Well, your book seems to be selling all over the world. Have you actually analysed where it's most popular?
I haven't. I know America it's really popular, because I also know that as well by a lot of people that actually like my words are American. So I think it's kind of like all over, but the larger part I think is America, which is, I don't know why, I can't explain why, but I think, yeah. But like I say, with Amazon, you're on a worldwide audience, so you get to share it with everyone, so it's really good.
Yeah, you said it's also available on
it's
other digital readers as well.
Yeah, it's on Kindle, it's on Kobo, it's also in Barnes & Noble, which is a big, massive American bookstore as well. So kind of covered a lot of markets with it as well, so that it's available everywhere. And also available in libraries for free. There's loads of libraries, people can go in and read it for free as well, so kind of covered everything.
Go. So, thinking back, I suppose probably 3, 4, maybe 5 years ago, how did you actually, at that point, start to get your poetry out there to find? Because obviously, I suppose when you write some poetry, you don't necessarily know whether anyone else shares your views on it, do you?
Yeah, well, I kind of like started with the social networking sites. I started actually when Facebook started just first coming out, when it wasn't really popular. I was just told about Facebook and I thought I'd have a look, and it was just a new site starting. And I started sharing my poems on there, and I actually used like kind of news groups as well. And when you got emails, you also had news groups attached to them. I started posting in news groups a long time ago, about 98, and people started commenting on the poems all like that. And it kind of started from there, and just basically sharing it with the world around you online, and people liking comments and people following your work, and then every time you put a new one you get more comments, and it inspires you to keep writing. So kind of just started using the social networking sites to kind of get my work out there.
Well, yeah, social media then has obviously made it a lot easier to get your work out there. Which is the best? Because there's so many to choose from now, aren't there?
Facebook is still hugely popular.
Yeah.
No matter how many people are actually kind of leaving Facebook because they're fed up of it, it's still massively popular. And then there's Instagram, Twitter, I kind of spread across all of them, just to get maximum exposure, kind of like that way. See your words everywhere, because everyone else is doing the same thing. You'll find people on Facebook could be on all the other sites sharing their works.
I think it can sort of be automatically now, can't it? With Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all that.
Yeah.
You just basically do it once, don't you?
Do it once and it shares it everywhere. So it's kind of like, that's what I can do. And you've got to stick with what is popular nowadays. So that is popular. And if you want people to see your work, you have to go with what is popular. So I kind of stick with Facebook and everything else. So that's the kind of way I've run it over the years.
Yeah. So what's, at the moment, a typical day for a modern day poet?
Modern day. Wake up, probably, I've always got pen and paper beside me and my music on, and just kind of like write stuff down. I do aim to get poems finished in a day, but it just doesn't work. So I'm currently writing for book number 2 now. So it's kind of building up a collection of poems, get ready for that, so I can get that out and released as well. So it's just kind of getting up, doing the housework, and kind of like in between writing stuff down as I go along. Because as I'm doing other stuff, kind of my mind is still poetry, so I'll always be thinking of words in my head, and I have to quickly write them down.
How far off is book 2 then?
About halfway through. I mean, the first book was about 10 years. So
right.
That was just like not really taking it too focused on a book. But this one I'm focused on getting book number 2 out. So I'm focused on knocking out the poems and getting them kind of like ready for book number 2.
So is it all new stuff, or is it?
Oh yeah, it's all new. Yeah.
You haven't reworked anything that didn't get in the
No, it's all new. So it's kind of like every day trying to get through poems and write them, get ready for book number 2, so I can have people. A lot of people have been asking when's the next book out, and so it's kind of getting it ready for book number 2.
As we said a little bit earlier, your books are in Northampton libraries and also in school libraries. And in fact, they're all over the place, aren't
Yeah, yeah. They're kind of like schools, colleges, universities, libraries, everywhere. Kind of like got them into places so that they'll kind of be there forever. And that people also, the best part is they get to read them for free. There's no cost, they don't have to buy anything. They can physically read them for free. Like we did when we grew up, we went to libraries and read loads of books for free. So that's the kind of thing I wanted them in there for as well.
So where is your book then? Where the strangest places?
Right, the strangest place is Alaska. We got into the North Pole.
Right.
Because I wanted to get into the most obscure place I could possibly find. The South Pole was empty, so we went with the North Pole, and it's currently in an Alaskan library to borrow for free.
Right. So what next then? Are you going to aim for every continent? Or?
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's just like trying to get them out everywhere, really. But it's like more important to me is the schools and the colleges and the universities, so that they are there in the reference libraries for people to look and see. And like once you're there in the libraries, like the British Library in London and places like that, you're kind of there forever. So you become a forever poet. And even when you depart the earth, you're going to be around for a long time, hopefully.
Yes, yeah. Well, yeah, because I can't imagine that the library would generally throw a book out, would it?
No, I mean, with the main ones, the British Library and Birmingham, they kind of keep them in the vault forever. So they have a kind of vault where they keep stuff. And if they're not borrowed, you physically have to request them to be sent to the library. So unless they're requested, they will always sit in the vault forever and ever. And unless the earth destroys, they're going to be there forever. So it's nice to be there.
Yeah, it's. We mentioned earlier. You say you like to have books available so everybody can read them. But is there a market for books of poetry? Do you think these days?
I think yeah, because poetry is becoming more popular now. A lot of children are getting really into poetry at school level. I think poetry is becoming more popular. And if you go past all the bookstores now, they do have a lot of poetry in the windows, poetry books. And I think it's becoming very popular, which is why I'm probably so busy nowadays with the workshops and stuff. That poetry is in the last year has really picked up in the schools, and kids are certainly learning it. And if kids are learning it, there's going to be more poets around, which means it's going to come back to the forefront.
Right. You mentioned workshops. You're going to be running some poetry workshops shortly. Workshops. That's not easy to say, is it? Soon you're going to be doing some poetry workshops.
Yeah.
Are you frightened?
Not frightened in a sense, because I'm not really. It's basically 11 to 14-year-olds, and not frightened. I'm just curious as to how it will go. It will be something different because I'm used to writing on my own and not really sharing it with people, as in how I write. It'll be interesting to kind of pass on that information to children and see how give them a few techniques and see what they do with it. So I'm not scared, but more just interested, kind of experiment to see how it goes in that sense.
So are you going to use your music technique, or are you just going to use other techniques as well?
Yeah, music techniques. There's going to be all different things. Music, we're going to do performance as well. So the children will see about performing poetry. We're going to show different how it can be used in different formats, like you just heard the music, and people voicing it. So we'll have an option for them to voice it at the end, give them a bit of confidence. So it won't just be about poetry, it'll be about creative and giving the children confidence to A, write a poem and own it and it be theirs, and B, to, if they want, perform it in front of everyone else and kind of like be the whole package for them. So it'd be something they've probably never done before. And again, yes, we will use the music and see what happens there with children listening to the type of music, how it encourages them to write different styles of poetry. And again, that'll be different because that's the way I write, but it'd be interesting to see kind of like how they interpret the music into words.
Because we don't yet know whether anyone else uses the same technique, or whether it would work for anyone else. But
it'll be interesting.
It will be interesting, won't it?
Very interesting.
It's 3 minutes past 10. We're into the second hour of the Saturday Breakfast with me, Kevin Askew, and my guest today, which is our resident poet, although he doesn't live here, and his name's James McInerney. Hello, James.
Hello.
Well, we mentioned that you've got some workshops coming up. What have you got lined up in the future?
Well, it's basically so far confirmed that I know that's happening. In November, I'm basically back on the BBC on the 16th of November doing my regular newspaper review, because I'm part of the newspaper review team down there. And I do that, and then in the first half, I'll talk about my works, and then do that in the second half. On the 23rd of November in Wellingborough Library, I'm meet the author. So they're running an event where you can come meet me. I'll sign some books. You can even buy the books there. So that'll be fun. I think it's from 2:00 onwards. And then kicking off in December is the poetry workshops at Wellingborough Library for 11 to 14-year-olds. And that is from 2 till 4 on the 6th of December, with the second one being on the 20th of December, Saturday again, same time, 2 till 4. So that's basically so far that it's all been confirmed. I've still got a lot of dates to confirm, but all that is.
Have they got people signed up for these workshops? You're going to be talking to yourself.
Yeah, well, I might be talking to myself, but I would get some cardboard figures and have them sat there. But yeah, it's kind of like a walk-in, and then each week you build up new members and kind of work from there and build up an audience. But it'd be nice to start off with a small amount and then kind of like build up gradually to getting a really good group going there. But that'll be on every other week because there's also currently a creative writing course running there at the same time. So mine will be there 1 week, hers will be the next, and then it'll carry on like that forever, basically. So it's going to be fun.
Good. Can you? We mentioned about writing poetry, and that. Can you write to a deadline? If I was to say to you, I need another poem by next week.
Oh, that's dangerous. Because I think the problem with deadlines is pressures on them, and sometimes you write. When pressure's on, you don't write your best. I've had that before in magazines and newspapers where I felt afterwards, and I've handed it in, they said it's fine, they're happy with it. I felt I could have done more with it. And you feel like with pressure, it kind of an automatic thing that says you're on a time limit and your brain goes into a panic. I've wrote my best stuff when I've had no deadlines, and I've been happy with just writing at my own ease and leisure. So I think deadlines put pressure on you, and pressure turns your creativity kind of like down a notch.
Well, we've established that you keep tweaking your poems. You keep going back to them and changing things and that. Do you ever, in the end, revert to an earlier version?
Yeah, I've done that loads of times. I've changed something so much, and then thought, and then I've actually looked at the original and thought I actually like that better. And I think because as you're writing, it's constantly evolving, so you kind of think to yourself, well, I could do that better, and could I do that better? And sometimes you don't need to do things better. It's fine as it is. I think that's just down to your own personal views of how you write. But I'm just an edit mad person.
Do you think you're a perfectionist?
Yeah, I think the more stuff you do, like in the media, and the more you become popular with your work, I think that comes to the territory that when you put stuff out, you want it to be perfect. And there's a worry that you're going to put something out and people are going to think, well, it's not better than the last one. And you kind of automatically in your brain, you've got this block where you think it's got to be perfect. Because you do so much stuff with people nowadays that people love your work so much that it's got to be the perfect thing put out there, and there's a panic. And I look at some of my older writes where I wasn't too worried about it, and I just kind of put stuff out and I didn't really care. But now I over panic about stuff because I'm worried that people aren't going to think it's as good as the previous.
Do you think you try too hard though?
Yeah, I think that's it. Like I said, people wait for your next poem to come out and are looking forward to it, and then you kind of have all these expectations of what people are going to think of it, and then you try too much. You try too much to make it sound perfect, and it kind of hampers the creativity process.
If you say what you're actually writing is how you feel about something when you listen to the music,
yeah.
And that, do you think then the fact that you're continually going back to it, you're actually going to end up losing the original concept?
I've got the idea of it down. I know exactly. The way I write is I write the middle first, and then I write the start. I don't write in sequence, so it's a very weird way of doing it. I'll write the middle of a poem, and then I'll add some to the front, and then add to the end, and that's the kind of thing. I'll never write one all the way through. So kind of like, I'll mix different songs with it and get different things, and it's kind of like a process of. It's just a mishmash, really, of when you write, and it's all done in a weird sequence. So you can go back to things and change things. And then sometimes by changing them, you actually get a better idea of what the poem is. Because when I start writing, I don't actually know what the poem is. I just kind of like start with something, listen to the music and think, okay, so what is this poem about? And then by the end of it, I've actually got it, and I'll go back and change a part to make it actually sound right. It's a weird process. It's a very weird process.
How on earth are you going to teach anybody this weird process?
Yeah, that's the kind of thing we've been talking about with the libraries. We're gonna teach them kind of like to listen to music first, but like I said, I can't really get into the mind of a person. They have to have. A lot of kids are really clued up with poetry nowadays. They'll come to a workshop and they already know what poetry is, and they'll come because they're doing it at school. They'll have an idea in their mind of what they're going to write about. You just have to give them guidelines and triggers, so the music and pictures, like art, is a good way of looking at a picture and kind of like in your mind writing a poem about that picture, which is all things we're going to try techniques with them. So you can't really teach poetry in that sense. You can give guidelines and you can give things like music and pictures to kind of inspire children to really get that out, creativity out of their mind.
Are you going to try the pictures idea instead of music?
Well, I have done that quite a few times actually, and it does work. So we're going to incorporate that into the thing and kind of give kids that idea of you can use these tools to help you write a poem you want. So
is it a matter of playing them some music and going, what does that make you think of? What are you thinking of when you hear that music?
We're going to give them guidelines like pictures, but we're going to try a few with music and just kind of like, I don't know how it's going to work. We've got to speak next weekend coming up for another workshop meeting. The idea is to try and get some kind of music playing of different emotional kind of music and see how they react with their writing styles. It's going to be complicated to start with, but once we get it nailed down, kind of how it's going to be, I think it'll be fine.
In your opinion, is a long and rambling poem or short and punchy one best?
I've found over the years the shorter ones work. I've wrote obviously all different lengths of poems. I've wrote some that are 2 pages long, and people have loved them. But I've found that people basically like the short, sharp poems that are basically emotion there and then in one foul swoop, and it paints a picture within 5 lines. And people like them because I do picture poems. So I take sections of my poems and share them on a picture, and then share them across Facebook, and they're really popular. So nowadays, short, sharp poems seem to be a lot popular than kind of like the long 2 or 3 pages that kind of drone on. That's the way I've kind of perceived it on the social networking sites, but they seem to be a lot more popular.
Is it down to attention span, do you think?
Well, I can only speak for myself, but yeah, it's definitely. I think people just, when you see 2 or 3 pages of a poem to read, people kind of like think that's a lot and switch off before they read. But the short, sharp poems are like quick, easy bites of poetry, and I think that's really popular.
Social media, local papers, magazines, local radio. What else can you do to promote your work?
Just kind of like word of mouth, I suppose. People that kind of read your poems, that love them, not necessarily on social media sites, but they read them in a library, they buy the book online, they share it with their friends, tell people about it, and that kind of word of mouth still works nowadays, even though we have a huge amount of social media networks available. So kind of like word of mouth is kind of a good way that people come to meet you at the author events, physically meet you as opposed to being online, and like your work, tell their friends, and it kind of stems from there.
Right, now you've got a website, obviously.
Yep.
How do people go about finding it?
Well, I'm basically just all on Google. So if you type in James McInerney, that's McInerney, and Wix, Wix, mine comes up the first search, and it's my poetry official website, which has got all the media stuff I've done. It's got a selection of my poetry so people can read it for free. It's got a place where you can borrow the books from, and everything I've ever done really in media.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've mentioned your books, so we now know that's how people can find out about it. But where can they buy your books?
They're available Amazon worldwide, which is everywhere in every country, everywhere. Kindle, Kobo, Barnes and Noble. They're available to read for free in schools, colleges, universities, and libraries in the UK and Ireland. So they're kind of available for free. They're available to buy, digital download, everywhere.
We mentioned your style of poetry. Have you discussed your poetry with other poets?
Yeah, I kind of like speak to the poets anyway online that like my work, and then share their work with me via messaging, and kind of discussed how they write theirs. And it's just a case of like talking with another poet. Each person's got their own style, their own way of doing things, and it's just appreciating each other's works for what they are. And they're really good writes, and I kind of think that's the way poets work. They just kind of like appreciate each other's work and kind of like talk about how to write things and that kind of stuff.
So the internet is the modern equivalent of the old sort of all the poets meeting in a coffee shop.
Yeah, or some smoke-filled pub.
Yeah. So what for the future? How do you see poetry? Do you think there is a place? Do you think it's going to survive?
I think it's going to get bigger and better. Definitely. I noticed like in the last year or so, it's been introduced into schools. Children, the next generation of people are basically getting into poetry again. It's being revived. And, all the 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds are starting to write poems and find out about poetry for the first time. And it's certainly becoming a lot bigger. And I've been a lot busier with poetry. So I know that it's basically starting to come back to what it was originally, which is busy.
And we've just been talking about other poets. The fact that you're a little bit more, I suppose, IT savvy.
Yeah.
Has made a big difference in getting your stuff out there.
Yeah, I kind of grew up on internet, social media, and that's the kind of thing I've done all my life. So it's not as though I've had to learn something new, other than it's been within me since a child. We grew up on PCs, computers, and had every single type of PC that came out every time as they come out. So I've kind of got used to everything. And then obviously as social networks became popular, like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, just basically adapted straight away and used them to the full capacity to help promote my work, which I have done over the years.
Where's it going to go next, though, with regards to social media and all that sort of stuff?
I think eventually, you give it 5-10 years down the line, Facebook will probably fizzle out. I noticed that a lot of people are kind of leaving Facebook.
Do you think it's going to go the same way as MySpace?
Yeah, I mean, well, MySpace had a revamp, and Justin Timberlake bought it, and I just thought I didn't ever get into MySpace. I don't know what it was about it. It was just more for bands, but I just never really got into it. Then they revamped it and made it look like Facebook. And I had a look at it and I just still couldn't get into it. I just think about MySpace that doesn't really do it for me at all. I just don't know what it is. But Facebook is the king of social networking. It really is. And I think eventually, though, that will fizzle and something new will be in its place, just like MySpace was. So
yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it... Because I still don't particularly like Facebook. I use Facebook. We use Facebook down here. I still prefer Twitter. So that is still my favourite because I think for information, I think Twitter is more useful than an entertainment type of one because up to the minute news, all that sort of information is available there.
I think Twitter's good also because it's basic, as in Facebook is filled of everything, games, messaging, this lot. Twitter is what it is, it says it is, and that's it, and it's in its simplest form. But Facebook is filled of everything, apps, games, and everything. And it's become a one-stop shop for everything. And you log into Facebook and you get bombarded with everything, whereas Twitter is not so bad. And it's a lot more low-key, and you feel as though you're not being hounded on Twitter. But Facebook, you know, friend requests, game requests, app requests.
Yeah, tell me about it. Game request. Had enough of that. Right. In the modern world, then, can you actually make a living from being a poet?
I think you can. For me, I enjoy doing poetry. Obviously, you have to pay the bills, but every year for me, it's got busier and busier. Like, if I look back on the previous years, every year I say it, it's been busy this year, busier than last year, but this year has been horrendously busy. And next year is going to be obviously following the trend because poetry is getting so popular, it's getting busier, and the books are selling and doing the workshops, and eventually, it'll get to the point where I'll have to just basically quit my job and do this full time.
Do you think it's going to get to that point?
I think so, yeah, because I've noticed that this year has been a significantly big jump compared to last year's and how busy I've been with doing everything. And with the workshops starting at the end of this year, and then next year they're going to be progressing and then doing things with schools, it's just going to be so busy for me. I'm not going to have time to write.
Do you think there's going to be a danger that when it is actually bringing in the money, that you're perhaps not going to enjoy it so much? Is it going to be more of a chore when you've got to do it as opposed to enjoying it?
I think with poetry you have to not do it every day because, like you say, it doesn't help with the creative process. I found if I go away for a couple of days and leave a poem and then go back to it, I found I'm better looking at it a fresh pair of eyes than actually every day it becomes a chore. So I don't think it'll ever be a chore for me because I love writing, I love mixing styles and everything. But I think if you were doing it on demand every day, it'd become a chore. But you've just got to step back sometimes and have a relax and then go back and write more poems.
If anyone would like to find out more about your books and your poems or get in touch, how would they do that?
Right, you can get via the website, which has got a contact thing anyway. If you just type in James Wicks, W-I-X, and poetry into Google, I'm the first one that comes up on the Google search. So that's links to every single way to contact me via email, Facebook, Twitter. I'm all on there. And it's also got links to buy all the books in all different formats. So it's a one-stop shop for every single thing.
Great stuff. Thanks for joining us this morning.
That's okay.
Come back next year and tell us how it went.
I will, yes, very much so.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
Radio Nene